and welcome to Romance Isn't Dead, episode 21, in which we come fully of age. It's good to know, right? I mean, I can actually drink and smoke in the United States. I don't know about UK, but...
Well, we could already do it. 3 episodes ago, we're coming of age over here is 18, unless you're having sex and then it's 16. So...
So you're authorized to have your own kids, but you're...
Well, I actually know someone who was authorized, who was pregnant when they got married at 16, but couldn't drink at their reception.
Well, you probably shouldn't have been drinking if you're pregnant.
But in the 80s, it wasn't considered so bad. They changed the law a couple of years ago, but it used to be you could smoke at 16 as well. So you could smoke and have sex at 16. You could get married at 16, but you couldn't drink. Oh, and you also couldn't drive because driving over here is 17. But
okay, here
makes so much sense.
Here, you can own a rifle, but not a pistol at 18. You can smoke, but you can't drink. And you can fight in a war, and you can vote at 18. At 21, you can drink, and you can own a pistol. So, yeah.
So 3 years makes a world of difference to your maturity, apparently.
Well, to be fair, the reason they passed that law was that drinking and driving accidents were predominantly people between age 18 to 21. And so they were trying to cut down on the number of drinking and driving deaths. And apparently it did help. But
anyway. You see, that's the funny thing. I think they've done research over here, and the number of people they catch drinking and driving in the UK is actually predominantly in the older, because they are more confident behind the wheel. They think they know it all.
Right, but here it was more the young and dumbs would drink and then get behind the wheel, like college age. So
I thought you said something else then.
No, I said young and dumb. No idea what you thought I said, but young and dumb.
I thought you said young and dom. It was like, okay, that's where my brain went right now.
Speaking of which, what have you been reading, Ray?
I have actually been reading. I've been predominantly reading fanfic because I read on my commute to work in the morning.
And were there doms in your fanfic?
A tiny bit, maybe, but I was reading Marvel, which actually is my primary focus when it comes to fanfic these days. I used to read so much of everything that I'll probably go back to Veronica Mars for a few weeks because, yay, new series of Veronica Mars is on at the end of this month.
Oh, cool.
For anyone who's a fan. Yeah, 8 episodes, all being uploaded on exactly the same day, and they are following on from the film. So, yay.
I love it when they do that.
Yeah, so do I, especially when it's all the same cast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is brilliant. Obviously, they killed off a few people in the film, so there'll be no Kristen Ritter or anything returning, but it will still be the original cast, so LOVE to everybody. But I'm primarily focused on Marvel, and I've been rereading a Thor Darcy fanfic, which isn't finished yet. Please finish it. Called A Temple Heart.
And when was it last updated?
It was last updated in May.
Well,
and there's only 2 parts left.
It's summer,
I know.
So it's kind of hard, a lot going on. I have been actually...
I know, but it still makes me sad.
I get it. I've been reading...
yeah, I agree, but what about you? I know that you've been reading a lot.
I've been reading... Actually, not Nalini Singh. I've been reading Christine Feehan. Which...
Wow.
Yeah, I've gone back to Christine Feehan. And so I've read several of hers, the more recent Dark series. She's added kind of a spin to it, and I've been getting them from the library. So
yay,
it's been kind
libraries.
of, yes, it's been kind of a mishmash of I'm reading them out of order, but she is up to 30, I think, 31 in the series.
Oh
So,
my God.
yes. So she's had to do some tap dancing to bring in new guys, and the way she's done it is she's had some ancient Carpathians were really old before the current prince even took power, and they went to a monastery and closed themselves off from the world so that they would not be a danger, and so they would not kill anybody or anything like that. So that's where she's getting a new crop of ancients from. And she's actually done some of the work to try and make this still interesting. That having been said, some of her dialogue has gotten pretty stilted. I don't know how else to say that. I don't know.
Do you feel like she's reusing content from previous books? I mean, we're talking 31 books in a series. That's a lot.
No.
There are reasons why a lot of successful series are short.
No, I don't really think she is using a bunch of pre-used content. She's using the same, for all time kind of thing, mine for all time kind of thing. So there's the whole soulmate connection thing. But they're getting darker. They're getting darker. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, I just went back to her for some books, and then
Well, you've recently read that new series of hers, didn't you?
I did. I read the Shadow series, and then I've been reading a few Jane and Krentz books here and there as well. I think that was her.
Yeah.
Quick. I've read some Jane and Krentz books, and then I've got one book on my library bookshelf online digitally that is an Amanda Quick book that I need to read. So I've just kind of been going back to some old classics in terms of authors that I've enjoyed in the past. So, yeah.
Isn't Jane Ann Krentz Amanda Quick anyway?
Yes. But it's more of like the Jane Ann Krentz is the modern, and then the Amanda Quick is historical, and Castle is another planet. So
I was going to say, because I remember reading a few Amanda Quicks back in the day, and they were really quite raunchy.
Maybe my definition of raunchy and yours are a little different. I'm not sure, but those are the historicals.
Well, the ones I recall reading were one of the main characters they were explaining in pretty explicit detail frottage.
I do not recall that one.
I'm trying to remember which one it is. I think that she was one of the authors that I kind of culled when I moved house.
Mm-hmm.
So all I remember is it had a very, very bright pink cover.
Okay.
And it was definitely an Amanda Quick. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Today we are here to talk about your choice, which was Frayne.
It was Wolfrain by Nalini Singh, and I will pull up the synopsis or the blurb from the back. Kidnapped as a young girl, her psychic powers harnessed by a madman, Memory lives a caged and isolated existence until she comes face to face with a wolf. Labeled an empath by her bad-tempered rescuer, Memory knows that her gift is nothing so bright. It is a terrible darkness that means she will always be hunted. But Memory is now free, and she intends to live. A certain growly wolf can just deal with it. Alexei prefers to keep his packmates at bay, the bleak history of his family a constant reminder that mating love hope is not for him. But Memory, this defiant and fearless woman who stands toe-to-toe with him, awakens the most primal part of his nature, and soon he must make a choice, risk everything or lose Memory to a murderous darkness that wants to annihilate her from existence. Very, very, very suspenseful sounding. Very scary sounding. And so what we have here is Memory is actually an empath, but she's not your run-of-the-mill empath. She's a different kind of empath, and her empathic nature enables the psy-net to repair itself. But that is, and she also can like project emotions onto others that can't necessarily feel them, and that's why she's been kidnapped. It is important, I think, with this book, if you have not read any of the psy-changeling books, you're going to be lost. Like, I mean, this is not a standalone. Wouldn't you agree, Ray?
Yeah, as someone who hasn't read them all, there were a lot of characters in here that I have to admit, I sat there and went, who are they?
Right.
Why are they there? What happened? Did I miss this? When was that set up? What happened here? Because I think I've read 3, maybe 4 of the psy-changeling original branch of the series. And I can honestly say, while I recognized Sasha and Luca, the majority of the characters I really did not know. And that threw me a bit. It made it very difficult to embrace the story and understand it. And genuinely, because I didn't understand it, I didn't feel like I knew what was going on at all. I found her name absurd, but we won't even go there.
That's okay. Last week I found someone else's name absurd, so there's that.
Yeah, you did. Poor Jennifer. At least her name was normal.
Okay. You know, I liked this book, but I am a fan of the psy-changeling series. I'm a fan of Nalini Singh, so I did not have any of that. But even as I was reading it, I was recognizing that if you had not read any of the previous ones, you were going to have problems. And I was hoping you would be better because I knew you'd read some of them, but apparently maybe not enough, huh?
I think well, that's the thing. I think with because in this book they mentioned that compound that's been set up that definitely wasn't the first few books.
Definitely
the
not.
entire psy-net had broken down, which hadn't happened in the first few books.
No.
I mean, Caleb Krychek, who is mentioned, and he's got quite a large role in it, and he's met his soulmate and everything else. He had only just appeared in the book that I read, in the last book I read, and he had a major part to play in this. And all of those little things. Yeah, I think of the guy in every time I think of Krychek, I think of the guy in the X-Files. But
David Duchovny?
No, he was Mulder.
Yeah, but you said the guy in the X-Files, and so he's the guy in the X-Files.
There was a character called Krychek in the X-Files.
I don't remember him very well.
He was dark-haired and dangerous, and he was in the X-Files.
That's not the image that comes to mind when I think about Caleb Krychek. Okay, anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, but that's who I think of because Krychek was such a bit part in the first few novels. In fact, he wasn't in the first few. I think he appeared in the last one that I read, which was maybe book 4. So reading all of that and all those changes, so much has happened in the interim, and there are, in the back of my copy, which I finally got from the library, there are so many books. There's no way on earth, unless I'd read all of them, I'd know what was going on. So it does throw you a bit. So it's not a start book. It's not I found this on the bookcase. So if you're going to the local libraries in the UK, that won't be the case. I found this on the bookcase and I'm going to read it first. Do not do that because you will be so lost. You will either never pick up one again or you will be searching forever for the other books. Because it really does, as a reader who hasn't read them all, it blows your mind some way because you're thinking, huh? And I have to admit, I spent the majority of the time reading this book, and I read it over a couple of days. I spent the majority of my time reading it going, what? When did that happen? Who's that? Well, I'm clearly meant to know who they are
Mm-hmm.
because they've obviously got backstories and they've got history with characters that I'm aware of, but I don't know who they are at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm.
And that can get really unnerving. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
twins. I think the twins were quite an early book, but not one that I read. Amara and
Mm-hmm.
her sister. I think they're quite an early book.
Ashaya and Amora. At least that's how I pronounce those names, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amara, dark, man, really dark. She's textbook sociopath. I would say that this, as you said, this is not a start book. It's not a standalone book, and I don't know that I would have had, like, if I had realized quite how much it was going to depend on the background. I don't know that I would have wanted you to have read it. But I wanted to read it, right? And I was like, well, we'll just
Yeah.
cover it on the podcast. So, but I liked it. I did like it. And I also liked that they were demonstrating that the psy-net wasn't healed just because the empaths were back. I liked Alexi's, I understood Alexi's internal conflict because of his concern that so many of his family had gone rogue. Like, I got that, but yeah, it's only three, right? It's like, it's three, but it is his grandfather, his father, and his brother. Like, that's okay. My mother died of breast cancer. That's enough for me to be going to the doctor to get mammograms every year, right? Imagine if my grandmother, my mother, and my sister had all died of breast cancer. I'd have already had my breasts removed, right? Because that would just...
Yeah.
So when you think of it as a disease, that he's concerned that it's a genetic thing, right? That he's predisposed to be a rogue, and he doesn't want to kill these people that he loves. So I understood that conflict that he was having with himself about, oh, do I need to be in this mating dance with Memory and all of that stuff. So I got that. And I liked Memory as a character. She's really feisty. I enjoyed that. And she was actually a person of color. And that is also something I think that Nalini Singh does, to have non-white
Did I miss
characters. Non-white characters. You may have.
I missed that completely.
That she was not white?
I really did.
Yeah.
I missed that completely. It didn't even come across to me at all. The only thing that I got was her hair was wild. That's it. That's all I got from her character.
Now I want to go back and
Her
reread.
appearance, anyway.
Now I want to go back and reread, but I really got that she was not white. Maybe I'm wrong. But
I feel like I missed a lot because I didn't understand or have the history with the novels that you did.
maybe...
But it doesn't make me want to go back and read them.
Well, let me say this too. Nalini Singh actually does a pretty good job of having non-white characters in her book. And I think that's important. Like, I think that that's a good thing. And so, I mean, it's not like she makes this huge deal or production about it, but I think that's
Which
a
is
good thing.
possibly why I missed it.
And now I'm sitting here going, well, maybe I read something that wasn't there, right? But I read that whole book with Memory in my head as being not white. So, and it was one of the reasons why I liked the book. So maybe I liked it, but I don't know. But I did like that book, and I think, I mean, we all have our specific taste, and obviously you're not a big enough fan of Nalini Singh to want to go back and reread that stuff, but okay. And so
I think it's too much. I think for me, it's because they aren't easy to get hold of over here. It would be a massive investment for me to go back and read every single one of those books that precede this one.
And it's not worth hundreds of pounds.
No, it's not. For me, I mean, to be honest, I spend a lot of money on books, and I think a lot of people who listen to us will spend a lot of money on books. However, this is a big investment because this is book, what, 16, 17 in the
Something like that,
series?
yeah.
And that's a lot of, especially when this particular book costs £19, that's a lot of money to spend.
Especially if you can't get them in paperback, or if digital's
Or at
not
the
running on,
library.
yeah, if digital's not running a special or whatever. So, no,
Exactly. So
absolutely. I get it. I 100% get it. I have been
I
reading
think
her
I'd have
books.
enjoyed it more if I had read the previous books, if I'd read enough of them to understand the small details that meant a lot. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, as we said, Caleb Krychek's importance in it all,
He's
the
so
Cynet
important.
collapsing, which isn't in an early enough book for it to have been covered in the ones I've read,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the other characters that aren't in the books that I've already read because their stories come later.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
get to know a far more about the snow chasers. Is it snow chasers or snow dancers?
Snow dancers.
And all of the other um, networks of changelings in the
Mm-hmm.
previous books than obviously you do about the size
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the humans, I'm guessing, because I remember you mentioning that there was a human somewhere
Mm-hmm.
or two,
Yeah. No,
but you don't.
she's been bringing humans in. So,
Yeah,
um,
so that for me is this is the sort of book I think if you've read the rest of them, then you will absolutely love it. But I think if you're looking at it as the entryway into a new world, start at the beginning and move forward because there's too much in here to make it make sense to you immediately.
yeah, you need to start with Sasha and Lucas's story.
Yeah,
You do. So, and then follow it
definitely.
along. And I mean, there are ones that you can skip, but maybe talk to someone who's read them all. And
Send us
heck,
a post on Twitter.
yeah. I mean, the you know what I can do. I can go back through the catalog and I can actually write a blog post, perhaps saying, okay, these are the books I think are critical for understanding the psy-changeling series. If you want, I mean, I think that might be a worthwhile
I think that might be
endeavor.
valuable.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, I read Nalini Singh's, I read a couple of her other series as well. And she does have vampire romance with angels, which is kind of an interesting, different take on it. And then
Isn't that the Guardian series?
that is the Guild Hunter series.
Yeah.
Guild Hunter.
I don't know why I thought Guardians. Maybe I was watching too much Marvel this weekend.
Maybe. But yeah, so I would say that's probably, I think this is completely valid concern. This is not a standalone. And so that really did impinge on your enjoyment of the book. Is that
Yeah,
right? Okay.
because I didn't because though I could read them as a separate entity, that so much of their story was tied in with other things that I wasn't aware of because I hadn't read far enough along in the series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew I knew more of the changelings than I did the size, but then they started doing things like they brought in Caleb, and he was quite a massive role. And the book that I'd seen him in, he was trying to get into power in the council, in the Psy Council,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just a brief mention. He wasn't. He was doing some manipulation, but he wasn't a big character. So his
Mm-hmm.
story hadn't been told. So all I knew was his name
Mm-hmm.
and this compound hadn't been created with all the size because obviously by the time I'd read I think there were three size by the fourth book, so there wasn't so much stress on they needed a compound. The Cynet hadn't had its collapse, so this
Mm-hmm.
darkness didn't exist. All these little things, all separately, they don't mean very much. Oh, I didn't know this one character, that doesn't matter. And it doesn't. But when you add in all the other things that surround it and all the events that have occurred between book 4 and book 16, you reach a point where you think, well, I actually don't understand what's going on. I've obviously missed some vital information, and I need that before I can read this and completely understand how they're helping her, what the heck is going on with the E's and the whole thing that they're doing with the sign net and helping rebuild it and helping to make it sturdy. Why did they need to do that? Because I wasn't aware that it had. I know that there were problems in it, but I didn't know it was that bad. So you sit there thinking. So I sat there and I was reading it, thinking, sounds bad. I really was legitimately thinking, I'm confused.
Right.
I needed a massive. They need to do what they did with the Dark Hunter series, where they actually published an encyclopedia. Got it. They published an encyclopedia that actually outlined the categories, the events that occurred, how these characters played a role, what role they played. And it could have been considered a spoiler, but it only worked up until the point where they published it. So if an encyclopedia or some kind of summary had come out prior to this book, I don't think I'd have had as many problems.
And you'd known about it and read it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, in terms of the romance itself, obviously that impinged on your enjoyment of the series. In terms of the relationship between Memory and Alexei, did you enjoy that relationship? Did you enjoy their... It was slow. Okay.
It didn't nothing. I think I worked out 3/4 of the way through the book, they still hadn't had sex. They'd kissed twice. That was, in comparison with the other books that I've read, especially the other series that I've read by her, because I have read the Rockstar series. Yeah, totally different. Totally different. Yeah, that was steamy almost from word go. This one was a very, very slow moving, which, as you say, is understandable given his history. And understandable given hers. But it almost seemed to go from 0 to 60, and the chapters were very, very short, and there were a lot of them. I have to say that I found really annoying, because I think there's about 60 chapters in this book. And they're all really, really short. Really short. There are only a few. I think maybe
Ray's
the longest
paging through the book, by the way, y'all. That's what you're hearing.
Just to find out. There's 60 chapters, including the epilogue, and not one of them is more than about 7 pages, maybe.
Okay.
I think that there were a lot of chapters, so it was almost laid out like a Portuguese Isabella Lande, who has a lot of chapters but doesn't actually mark them as chapters, which is weird, but we won't go there. That's to do with translation. I think
go ahead.
I found that their romance was moved oddly, but in many ways that was understandable given both of their backgrounds. So I wouldn't have, if I'm completely honest, wouldn't have classified it as a romance.
I was thinking that this one is starting to stray a bit towards urban fantasy, as opposed to...
In fact, look at our library sticker.
I can't see it.
It says fantasy. It's not classed in the romance, in the urban romance, or anything else. It's actually classed, it's shelved in British libraries as a fantasy novel.
Okay. So,
and I think that for me, that's actually right.
These last 3 books that are the
Psy-changeling
Trinity series. First of all, they went places I wasn't expecting, but that's neither here nor there. They are a little different to the first arc of the psy-changeling series in terms of getting from Sasha and Lucas to Caleb and Sahara and then into the arrows a little bit. So I think there has been a bit of a shift there, and she has, Nalini Singh does have a straight, like, not romance book coming out. So I think she's performing sort of that shift that Linda Howard has performed and all that stuff. We're really kind of moving away from romance as a straight genre.
Kind of like Julie Garwood.
Mm-hmm. As a straight
Julie
genre.
Garwood with her moves. Yeah, her move from historical romance to thrillers.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I would say that if you are a fan of the psy-changeling series, this is actually pretty good. It's just not maybe as romance heavy as you're used to. And I really, as I said, I liked both characters and I understood their motivations. I wasn't left wondering like what this came out of nowhere. Neither of them came across to me as being like ridiculously immature or anything like that.
No, so, I would agree with that.
And there weren't any issues with age problems or anything like that. It was just I enjoyed it.
She was 23 or something, I think they worked out, because she was kidnapped at age 8. But as I said, I think for me the issue wasn't so much that it was badly written or anything else. It was purely down to the fact I didn't understand it because I hadn't read, because it's so far into the series. Mm-hmm. I hadn't read the books that preceded it, and it wasn't the kind of, I don't think it's the kind of book you can pick up and automatically A, become absorbed in, and B, understand everything if you haven't read any of the others. Well, that for me is the crux of it.
Going back to Feehan for a minute, I had put down the Dark series ages ago, and then I picked up 31, number 30, I think. And I was able to kind of get back in that world without too much trouble. And maybe that we could have a discussion about what that means. But I was able to get back into that world without too much trouble because she hasn't changed it so much that it left me going, who the what the huh? But with Nalini Singh in this series, it seems like so much has happened since book 1. Yeah, if you haven't kept up with at least a few books in this series, this is going to be a tricky read for you. So yeah, I'm really not trying to be negative, because
that's the thing. As I said, it wasn't a badly written book. It was the characters were well rounded, but because they weren't the only characters that you needed to know in the series. Because of that, it made it really difficult, because if you hadn't read the first book, you wouldn't even know who Sasha was. If you hadn't read whatever book the Caleb story was in, you wouldn't understand why he was there, and I haven't read that one. So
good, so good.
For me, I think he was. It sounds weird. He was the one I had most of the issues with, not because he's a bad character, but because he changed so much from the guy that you originally met in like book 4.
So good. I love it. It's my favorite.
So I'm guessing this is going to be a book that Sally will be recommending when she does her blog post.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be the one where, like, if you read none of the others, you must read this one.
But because so much happened in previous books, which isn't a bad thing at all, because so much happened, and understanding this novel depends on you having that history, it makes it really difficult to sit there and get completely absorbed, as I did in the book that we read for the previous podcast.
See, I was completely absorbed in Wolfrain, but then again, I've read all of them, with the exception of the immediate preceding book, which I could not get through, which is interesting. Like, I had no problems getting through this book, but I had a lot of trouble getting through the one right before it, and I don't even remember the name of it. I don't even want to... Ocean Light. Okay, so...
Yeah, and the one before that was called Silver Silence.
I like Silver Silence, too. I liked that one, too. I liked it, didn't love it.
I think that is the lesson with books that are in a series. There are certain authors, as you mentioned, Christine Feehan. You picked up a book that you hadn't read in the series for like ages, and you were able to get in there. That's because it's almost as though she writes her books as standalones, and re-explains the history over and over and over again.
Which is a little annoying, actually, by the way.
If you have read all the others.
Yes. Yes.
Whereas if you haven't read all of the others and you just pick up one of them, you've got no issue with understanding it. These ones depend on you having a history with the books. I think
Exactly.
that's the crux of it. These ones depend greatly on you having read all 16 previous books.
Okay.
And if you haven't read them, you're going to struggle a little bit to understand the motivation behind the characters and the history. Because this one, I think one of the things that I found quite interesting about this one was the fact that at the start of every single chapter, there is an excerpt from a letter or a book or something else, which read on its own makes 0 sense, but at the same time it gives you a little bit more insight into certain elements of the history. However, it does help you understand things like, why is there suddenly a compound when in book 4 there were only 3? That kind of thing. It doesn't pull you out of the story because there are other things going on, but at the same time it makes you think, well, what have I missed here?
And the answer is a lot.
Because there is no, that's one of the things that you need to realize, I think. There is 0 summary of what went before.
Okay. Well, have we said all we need to say?
I think we have. Now you need to give it your chili rating.
Oh.
It's difficult. See, it's a difficult one with this one because, as we said, this is not a straightforward romance novel.
Right. I understand. I would say it's probably because they wait really long in that book. I'm thinking low 5-ish range. Because,
yeah, I'd go with sort of 4.5, 5.
Okay. That makes sense. So for 2 weeks in a row, we're in the 5 range for the chilies.
And for 2 weeks in a row, we haven't actually had a, oh my God, this is so bloody awful book.
Yes. We're on a roll. We're on a roll. Yes. Okay, and we're taking a chance with our next book. Tell us what it is.
Oh, we really are. This was an almost a mutual choice because we realized that one of the things we haven't done, we've talked about it quite a bit, and in fact we had an entire podcast about it, was the teen or the young adult romance. And we were trying to find something different that we could A, both get hold of, and B, wasn't going to be impossible for anybody who wants to read along with us to obtain. So we have decided together on a book called The Iron King by Julie Kagawa. That's Kagawa. This is the first in a series. I think there's maybe 6 books, I want to say.
It's either 5 or 6 at this point.
Yeah.
I think.
In this series, and she's still doing some work on it from what I gather. And this is a book that was published by Myra Books in the UK and Harlequin Teen in the US. So we know that it has to be a romance because that's pretty much all Harlequin publish. And we know that it is aimed at the teen audience. So that's what
we expect the chili pepper rating to be like a half.
If that.
Yeah. Maybe a 1.
We've done a couple of books that have had a 0 rating for chili.
Yes, we have.
And that's mostly because they were pretty awful books, to be fair.
They weren't awful. Some of them were good, but they just weren't romance novels per se. They were more chick lit.
Yeah, having said that, we could also say the same for Pride and Prejudice, which we will be reading at some point. I promise. It will be my pick at one point. Yeah, I love the face that you've just pulled there. That says it all. We will be reading Pride and Prejudice at some point. It's one of the original romances if you're going to the traditional. Me. I love it.
She hates me. Y'all, she hates me. She's going to make me read Jane Austen. She hates me.
Hang on, I haven't made you read Romeo and Juliet.
I've read Romeo and Juliet.
That would mean I hate myself.
I'm going to make you read Much Ado.
That's okay. I did that for degree. I've got a paper on it. I don't have to read it again.
No, if I have to read Pride and Prejudice again, you have to read. Okay, all right.
I minored in Shakespeare. To be fair, I am English, and I did English lit, and I minored in Shakespeare. So I did most of his plays, including Coriolanus, which we won't even touch. But So our next book is The Iron King by Julie Kagawa, which is the first book in her Iron Fae series. That's Fae Fey, not Fae Fay. So we're talking fairies. It looks quite interesting, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
We
I
both,
mean,
yeah, we both didn't look at it and go, "Oh dear God, no," which is a good
right.
sign.
Now, that
It
having
just
been said, neither of us have gotten our hands on any of it, and it could be written in the first person, which will make me groan. There could be any number of problems with it, but we will
it
see.
could be written. It could be worse. It could be written in the present tense, first person.
I hope not. Man, I hope not.
We
All
have to.
right.
The thing we'll have to remember with this one, though, is it is targeting an audience that we are no longer part of.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. We are not them.
No,
We are not them. All right. Well, I think we've been at this for a while, so we should probably call it a day. Ray, where can they find you?
they can find me on Twitter at All About Ray or ISN Romance. So if you love our podcast and think we're insane, please do follow us over there. Yeah,
You
because
love our
we
podcast and think we're insane. Okay, yeah, that's it.
that's fair enough. Come on, because we are. I have a certificate to prove it. I'm quite proud of that. But if you do really like listening to us and want to find out when we're posting, what kind of books we're covering, or have any questions for us at all, we do respond to them on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
We are quite responsive there anyway. And obviously we also have the blog, which is, oh dear Lord, I can't remember. I will post it down below.
Nice.
Yeah, I will post it down below because there will be some stuff on there in the coming weeks, including a summary from Sally on the books in the psy-changeling series that if you really want to understand the latest one, you will need to read to
Yeah.
actually go ahead and not go like I did. Huh, I'm lost. And of course, you can find us on Podbean at romance
Deceased.
isn't. No, that's our email address.
Oh, sorry.
romanceisn'tdead.podbean.com. So you can find us all there, and we're on Facebook, and we're on, oh dear, we are we're
We're
on YouTube.
basically anywhere that you want to find us. Poor Ray's having a tough time with this one. So if you look for us, you can find us. We're there.
Yeah,
And I'm
we
sure
are
she
there.
will post links. So I can be found if you really want to find me for whatever reason. I can be found on Twitter as Palmetto Blue, and I am on Instagram as, I think, Palmetto Blue 2016. And if you're looking at me on Instagram, I'm sorry. It's just like mostly crochet stuff. So yeah.
It's
I mean,
okay.
I occasionally
Mine's all
post things
cats.
about the podcast, but not very often. So
Yeah. Mine's all cats.
yeah, feel free to send us a message if you have questions. If you have if you have a recommendation or request, let us know. We'd be happy to hear it. And Ray, how would you like to say goodbye today?
Keep on searching for that happily ever after.
And I would just remind you that romance isn't dead. It's alive and well on your bookshelf. Bye.
Bye.